The church felt too small for the weight of what was happening. Every bench was packed, every whisper sharp enough to cut. The smell of old wood and old hymns wrapped around Elellanar Wade as she stood at the altar in a borrowed wedding dress that didn't belong to her any more than the moment did. The lace was yellowed, the fit too loose, and the prairie roses she held were already wilting. She stared at the 12 floorboards between her and the exit and wondered if she could run. She knew she couldn't. The whole town of Copper Ridge had come to watch her marry a man she barely knew. Clayton Hartwell stood across from her, tall and steady, hat held respectfully in his hands. He was the wealthiest rancher in 3 counties, a man who carried a quiet power in the way he stood. She expected coldness in his eyes, maybe pride or arrogance, but when she looked at him, she saw nothing except stillness, no cruelty, no warmth, just calm she didn't understand. Her father wasn't beside her. He couldn't bear to watch what he had agreed to, what desperation had forced him to do. The bank threatened foreclosure. A stranger offered salvation. The price was her hand in marriage. She was 19, scared, tired, and out of choices. The minister's voice pulled her back. Eleanor barely heard the question, but she knew the words that followed would decide her entire life. She tried to swallow, but her throat tightened. "I do," she said. The sound of her voice cracked like thin ice. Then the minister turned to Clayton. "Do you, Clayton James Hartwell?" "I will," Clayton said. "Not I do, I will." The words rolled through the church like a low thunder. Eleanor's head snapped up. Clayton didn't look at her. He kept his eyes forward, jaw firm. When the minister announced them husband and wife, the words dropped heavy in Eleanor's chest. Clayton offered his arm. She hesitated. 1 heartbeat, 2, 3. She finally placed her hand on his arm. His touch surprised her, gentle, steady. Not claiming her, just guiding her. Outside, the October wind bit her cheeks as they walked toward the wagon. People stared, some with pity, some with judgment. Clayton helped her into the wagon, careful and quiet, stepping back the moment she flinched. He didn't try to touch her again. "Name's Clayton," he said softly as he gathered the reins. "Reckon you already know that."
She only nodded.
She didn't trust her voice. "You all right, Miss Wade?" "It's Mrs. Tepwood." "Hartwell now," she said. The words tasted bitter. He didn't answer right away. He clicked the reins and steered the wagon toward the foothills, his eyes fixed on the winding road. After a long moment, he spoke again. "Only if you want it to be." They rode in silence through the open land, the church shrinking behind them. The Hartwell Ranch rose from the valley like something out of another world, a grand 2-story home with wide porches and windows that caught the fading sunlight. Smoke curled from the chimney. It looked warm, safe. But Elellanar didn't feel either. Inside, the house smelled of wood smoke and coffee. The furniture looked hand-carved. The stone fireplace flickered with soft light. Clayton showed her the kitchen, the pantry, the wide staircase leading up to the hall. He walked with the quiet confidence of a man used to space and responsibility. He opened a bedroom door. "This is your room." She stepped inside. The quilt was soft blue and cream. A washstand sat near the window. The room was simple, clean, comfortable. Then her eyes caught the lock on the inside of the door. Clayton pointed to it. "Use it if you need to," he said. "I won't knock unless you ask me to." Eleanor stared at him, unable to speak. No man who claimed a bride this way would offer her a lock. No man she knew, anyway. "You understand?" he asked gently. "Yes," she whispered. Clayton nodded once and stepped back. "There's supper if you're hungry." He left without waiting for a reply. Eleanor locked the door and sat on the edge of the bed, hands shaking, heart pounding. She didn't cry. She couldn't. She stared at the fading light and wondered if she had just promised her life to a stranger or someone far more complicated. Downstairs, Clayton ate alone. 2 plates were set. He didn't touch hers. After a long moment, he wrapped warm biscuits in a clean cloth and set them quietly outside her door. He didn't knock. In the morning, she found the biscuits still warm. She ate them sitting on the bed, unsure of what to do next in a life she had never planned. Downstairs, she heard voices. "Town's already talking," Silas, the ranch hand, said. "Town can keep talking," Clayton replied, his voice calm but final. "They say you got yourself a pretty bargain." "She's not a bargain," Clayton said firmly. "She's my wife." Eleanor pressed her hand against the door. Something in his voice felt solid, protective, real. That evening she found fresh bread on the table. Warm, waiting, unspoken kindness she didn't know how to accept. 3 days passed in careful silence, the kind that tiptoed around fragile ground. On the 4th morning, Elellanar walked into the kitchen and found Clayton sitting at the table with a ledger and a cup of coffee. He looked up when she entered. She froze. "Morning," he said. She swallowed and nodded. "Morning." It was the first word she had spoken to him since the wedding. Something shifted. Something small. Something new. The kitchen felt warmer than usual that morning. Maybe it was the fire. Maybe it was the way Clayton looked up when Eleanor sat across from him, hands wrapped tight around her coffee cup. They didn't speak at first, but it wasn't the quiet of strangers anymore. Something had changed, even if neither of them knew what to call it. Eleanor finally asked the question that had lived in her chest since the day of the wedding. "Why did you agree to marry me?" Clayton set down his pen and leaned back, studying her with calm eyes. "Man named Garrett came to me 6 weeks ago. Said your family needed help. Said a marriage contract would benefit us both. I thought it was a common arrangement. I figured maybe it would be good to have someone in this house again." She lowered her gaze. "You didn't know I had no choice." He froze. The truth hung heavy in the air. "No," he said quietly, "I didn't know." So she told him everything. The drought, the debts, the bank notice. Her father's tears when he agreed to the arrangement. Clayton's jaw tightened as he listened. When she finished, he sat still for a long moment. "I'm sorry," he said. Eleanor looked up, startled by the sincerity in his voice. "I thought it was mutual," Clayton said. "A practical match. When I saw your face at the altar, I knew it wasn't, but stopping it then would have shamed you in front of the whole town." "So you married me anyway," she whispered.
I did, and I meant what I said.
"You're my wife, but that doesn't mean I own you." His words settled deep inside her, softer than she expected, heavier than she wanted. A knock at the door broke the moment. A boy handed Clayton an envelope from the church committee. Clayton read it, face darkening, then tossed it into the fire. "What was it?" Eleanor asked. "A welcome reception for you." "We're not going. We have to." "No," Clayton said firmly. "I'll handle the town." She didn't argue. She didn't need to. That night, she left her bedroom door slightly open, just enough for light to spill into the hallway. Clayton noticed it when he walked upstairs. He didn't say anything, but the next morning, bread was warm on the table again. 2 weeks passed in a slow, cautious rhythm. Eleanor learned the ranch routines. Clayton spoke more, little things, steady things. One morning, he asked if she wanted to learn to ride. She hesitated, then nodded. He brought her a gentle mare named Clementine and guided her hands on the reins. His touch was careful, never lingering too long. When Clementine nudged Elellanar's shoulder, she let out a surprised laugh. Clayton smiled. Not a big smile, just a small, real one, and something warm flickered inside her. But Copper Ridge was not so gentle. On a Wednesday trip to town, whispers followed them like dust trails. Inside the general store, women stared without hiding it. Outside, a drunk cowboy leaned against a post and smirked. "Well now," he drawled, "if it ain't the new Mrs. Hartwell. Did the boss treat you nice?" Eleanor froze. Clayton stepped in front of her, voice low and cold. "If you've got something to say, say it to me." The cowboy took one look at Clayton's eyes and backed away. In the wagon, Elellanar sat stiff, angry at the world and herself. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" Clayton asked. "For the gossip. For what they say about you because of me." "Let them say what they want," Clayton said. "Doesn't change what's true." And what's true? That you're safe here. That's all that matters. She looked at him then, really looked. His strength was quiet, not loud, not demanding, just steady. Reliable. Thank you, she whispered. He nodded once. Days later, she planted tulip bulbs near the porch. He watched her for a moment before asking, "Think they'll grow?" "I hope so," she said softly. "Me too." Winter crept closer. Nights grew colder. One midnight, unable to sleep, Elellanar wandered to the porch and found Clayton sitting alone, staring at a worn photograph. She hesitated, then sat beside him. "May I?" she asked. He handed her the photograph. A woman with kind eyes, a newborn wrapped in her arms. "Mary," Clayton said, "my wife, and our son." Elellanar felt her chest tighten. "They both died," he continued. 5 years ago. She looked at him, not with pity, but with understanding he didn't expect. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He nodded. "Some nights it still hurts, but grief doesn't mean you stop living." They sat under the stars, their breaths forming clouds in the cold air. For the first time since she arrived, Elellanar didn't feel like a stranger sitting next to him. She felt like someone who belonged in the quiet with him. The following Sunday, she faced the church women alone. Clayton offered to go with her, but she shook her head. "This is mine to face." Inside the parlor, Mrs. Dalton and her friends circled her with forced smiles. The questions began soft, then sharpened. "How does it feel to be bought?" Mrs. Dalton asked. The room froze. Elellanar stood tall. "My father was desperate. Clayton gave me a way out. That's more than any of your husbands would have done." Mrs. Dalton's smile faltered. "You're cruel," Elellanar said. "There's a difference." She walked out head high. When she reached home, Clayton found her on the porch. Her hands shook, but her eyes burned strong. "What happened?" he asked. She told him everything. Clayton's jaw locked. His eyes turned cold. Not at her, but for her. "They won't speak to you like that again," he said. "You can't control what they say." "No," he said, taking her hand for the first time. "But I can make sure they hear me louder." Something inside her shifted. She didn't pull her hand away. That night, she packed a small bag, wrote a letter saying she was leaving, not because of him, but because she didn't know if she deserved the place he'd given her. But at dawn, Clayton found her standing in the kitchen, the letter untouched. "Why do I feel trapped?" she asked. "By what?" he asked. "By me? By kindness," she whispered. "By wanting to stay." Clayton stepped closer. "Then choose, stay or go. Either way, you're free." Her breath trembled. "If I stay, what then?" "Then we face the world together. Not as strangers, as partners." She picked up the bag, then slowly unpacked it. "I choose you," she said. Clayton closed his eyes, relief washing over him. "Then let me do something for you," he said. "For us." "What?" "You'll see on Sunday." She nodded. And that night, for the first time, they sat by the fire together. Sunday morning came bright and cold, the kind of morning where the sky seemed too clear for anything heavy to happen. Elellanar sat beside Clayton in the front pew of the church, her hands folded tight in her lap. The whole town of Copper Ridge had gathered, filling every seat, every aisle, every corner. Whispered rumors floated through the room like dust, but Clayton sat calm and steady beside her. When the hymns ended and Reverend Hayes prepared to speak, Clayton stood. "Reverend," he said, "with your permission, I'd like to say a few words." Hayes nodded, surprised. Clayton walked to the front, pulled a folded paper from his coat, and faced the entire town. The room fell silent. Elellanar felt her heart pounding, not from fear, but from something new. Trust. "Most of you know that Elellanar came to me through an arrangement," Clayton said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried through the room like a steady wind. "Some of you think I bought her." A ripple of murmurs passed through the pews. "You're wrong," he said. "I didn't buy a wife. I paid off a debt to give her family a chance. What I gave Elellanar was a way out. What she gave me was a second chance at life. Gasps whispered through the crowd. Then he held up the document. This, Clayton said, is the deed to the northern quarter of my ranch, 200 acres. Water rights included. As of yesterday, it belongs to Elellanar Hartwell. Only her. She can sell it, work it, or walk away from it. She has the right to leave me if she chooses. No one owns her. People stared, stunned. Even the ones who disliked Clayton leaned forward to see. Eleanor's breath caught in her chest. She looked at him, eyes wide. He didn't look back yet. He kept speaking. If any of you have something to say about how she came to be my wife, he said, say it to both of us. Together. He walked back to his seat, sat beside Eleanor, and took her hand. This time she didn't hesitate. She held on. The church was silent until Eleanor stood. I came here with nothing, she said softly. Clayton gave me dignity and choice, not wealth, not land, safety, respect. And today, I choose him because I want to, not because I have to. She sat, and for a moment the room felt frozen. Then Mrs. Porter, the oldest woman in town, pushed herself up with trembling hands. I was wrong, she said clearly, about both of you. One by one, people nodded, some ashamed, some amazed. Reverend Hayes cleared his throat, unsure what to say next. Let us pray, he finally murmured. When the service ended, the town filed out quietly. A few ranchers tipped their hats at Clayton. Some women offered Elellanar warm, cautious smiles. The thick walls of judgment that once surrounded them had cracked. Outside, in the bright winter sunlight, Eleanor turned to Clayton. You gave me land, she whispered. I gave you freedom, he said. What you do with it is yours to decide. She stepped closer and kissed his cheek, a soft, grateful touch. Thank you. They rode home without fear of the eyes behind lace curtains. For once, the town's silence felt like respect instead of spite. Winter melted early that year. By March, the first signs of spring broke through the soil. Tulips rose from the ground, the same bulbs Eleanor planted months ago, bright red and gold against the green. Clayton found her in the yard planting apple saplings. Those won't grow fruit for years, he said. That's fine, she said. I'm not going anywhere. He smiled and came to stand beside her. Need help? Always. They worked together, digging soil and setting roots, the warm wind brushing their faces. That evening they ate supper side by side at the kitchen table, not across from each other anymore. Town's quieter, Eleanor said. People move on, Clayton answered. Or pretend to. I don't need their approval, she said. No, Clayton agreed. You don't. He looked at her with something soft and steady, something that didn't need to be spoken. She felt warmth bloom in her chest. You ever regret marrying me? She asked. Clayton shook his head. Every life has regret. You're not one of them. She smiled. Good, because you're the best decision I ever made. They walked her land at sunset, the orange sky reflecting on the fresh soil. They reached the fence line between her property and his. Want me to take it down? Clayton asked. Eleanor shook her head. Leave it. It reminds me I chose to cross it. Clayton looked at her with quiet pride. I'm proud of you, he said. I'm proud of us. He kissed her forehead. She closed her eyes, letting herself lean into him for the first time without fear. You think the apple trees will grow? She asked softly. I know they will, he said, 'cause you planted them. And you don't do anything halfway. She laughed, free and bright, and he smiled at the sound. They walked back to the house together. The front door stood open. Warm lamplight spilled across the porch, and the fire crackled inside. It no longer felt like a stranger's home. Eleanor paused at the threshold and looked at the land behind her, the land that belonged to her now not because of a marriage contract, but because someone respected her enough to give her the choice she never had. Clayton held the door. Ready? He asked. Yes, she said, her voice steady and full. I am. They stepped inside together, and the door closed softly behind them as the first warm breeze of spring swept across the valley.